In life we have ups and downs and we have disappointments, usually people orientated, and it's important to be able to park that somewhere where it doesn't take over your life. And if you can do that as well as I can, and this would involve a variety of subjects, sad losses in the family, business problems, personal problems. If you can actually detach yourself from that, then you realise how lucky we really all are anyway, just to be here to start with. So we have no right to feel anything other than happy all the time. And if it makes me superficial, all I can say is I'm 75 in June and I've had a blinder. And no one and nothing will ever be allowed to change that in my lifetime while I'm breathing. So, in the words of the proverb, you.
Barry, how are you?
Well, I was all right. Good turnout. Well done. Nothing else to do with your time, obviously.
There's nobody in the country having a PT session today, I've decided, walking around here.
They all look
everyone looks so
fit.
fit, don't they? I know.
I'm trying, but I'm failing.
Well, let's get to that. We'll get to your health programme later on. I've listened to many interviews with you, Barry. You're an endlessly fascinating person. And one of the things that came out on one of your interviews with Desert Islanders, you said you're the happiest man in the world and refused to have a bad day. So before we start at the very beginning of your business career, I think anybody in this room would want to know how you managed to achieve that.
My wife decides it's because I'm superficial, if that makes sense. What I have, which is actually important in life and in business especially, which is my primary concern, is the ability to compartmentalise. In life we have ups and downs and we have disappointments, usually people orientated, and it's important to be able to park that somewhere where it doesn't take over your life. And if you can do that as well as I can, and this would involve a variety of subjects, sad losses in the family, business problems, personal problems. If you can actually detach yourself from that, then you realise how lucky we really all are anyway, just to be here to start with. So we have no right to feel anything other than happy all the time. And if it makes me superficial, all I can say is I'm 75 in June and I've had a blinder. And no one and nothing will ever be allowed to change that in my lifetime while I'm breathing. So, in the words of the proverb, fuck you.
I should have saved that question to the end, because that would have been a brilliant way to finish. Maybe we'll go back to that and complete the circle. Okay, let's go back to the very start. The man who reinvented snooker is one of the titles that you've been given. But it all kind of started by accident in a way, didn't it? That relationship. You weren't going around desperately hoping to reinvent snooker. You were an accountant.
It's very difficult, and I apologise for all of you if I bore you, so just walk out if you've heard enough. But I led a very happy childhood, and my mother was very dominating as a figure. My dad died early. My dad was a bus driver. My mum was a char lady. We came out of the estates. Pretty normal story, really. But I can never remember feeling unhappy. But what I did develop early doors, without being envious, I wanted money. Does that sound really basic? I wanted to have things. And I realised that I wasn't the smartest kid in the school. I wasn't the brightest candle, but I could burn longer than anyone. I was totally relentless in my approach. I was focused. And when I say focused, I'm not talking about a little bit of focus. I was totally dominated by focus with one objective, because it made my life easier. So I went through the routines of qualifying as a chartered accountant, things like that. And then, the one thing that we all need in life, and you've had it, Gabby, as well, we've all had it if you look back, there are key moments in your life when God smiles on you. and decides to give you a chance or give you an idea or give you an opportunity. And then it's up to you. Do you take it or do you turn away from it? And a lot of people don't recognise their opportunity. So you need a bit of luck. No one's a genius that just makes things happen. You need that breakthrough, and then you need to make the most of it. And for me, I got the chance to suddenly become, as a chartered accountant, I got to be a finance director of actually a fashion company that wanted to diversify. And one day the phone rang and someone said, I've got a chain of snooker halls, are you interested in buying them? It wasn't my money, someone else's money, which is always sweet. And I bought a chain of snooker halls, and then God decided that the BBC should put snooker on television, and suddenly I became an overnight genius. Everyone said, how did you know this was going to happen? Oh, saw the trend, looked at the data. Actually, I had no bloody idea. It was a total fluke. And suddenly I ended up with this massive business, making loads of money. And the original company I worked with went into hard times, and they needed some expert sorting out, which I was quite good at when I was younger. And they ended up selling me a third of the company. And in 1982, I sold that company and made a shed load of money. And I was going to retire. I was 34. I thought I was going to go play cricket, going to go fishing, going to play golf. And after 6 weeks, I realised I need to do deals. That's what I was born to do. I need some action. I need to make some money. Because it's not about making money. It's about winning a game. You see, people get the wrong idea with money. Money's whatever you want to spend it on. Some people I've seen are very happy with no money. Other people are only happy if they're a billionaire. You know, both of them are sad bastards. What it is we're playing a game, and we're playing to bloody win. So I do talks like this all around the world, and people say to me, you know, you're a very wealthy guy, you've done well from a poor background. How did it happen? How do you increase productivity for my business? I say, well, most of it's common sense. It's not rocket science. You know, if you want to increase productivity, I tell you, start an hour earlier and finish an hour later. That'll do for starters. That'll add about 9 to 10, 12% to your productivity. You know, you didn't have to go to Harvard to come up with that one, did you? We're not theorists, we're pragmatic. All right, we go for the jugular. But just as you would train to win an event, how you would prepare, how you would sacrifice, how you would be diligent, you apply those messages to your business, and you cannot fail because you're focused. And if you're focused, no one or no thing can get in your way. If not, get a job working for someone else, mate, because you just failed the entrance exam.
So go back. You've sold the snooker halls, right? And you decide you need to do something, clearly, because here you are, you know, a long, long time later, still doing lots of different things. And the opportunity in snooker that you saw was perhaps you're giving yourself, I don't think you're doing yourself a justice, because not everybody would necessarily have seen that Steve Davis, for example, was going to become the superstar sports person that he did. But your relationship with him early on was probably one of the most key relationships, I guess, to growing that empire at Matchroom.
I don't think I'd be sitting here without Steve Davis coming into my life. I was running a successful billiard hall company, snooker company. I loved it because they were my type of people, in the customers during the day. And my phone went, and the manager at Romford Snooker Hall said, there's a kid up here you should have a look at. He looks useful. And I went upstairs and, listen, you're the wrong age group. I had dinner with Steve Davis last Saturday, and we were discussing whether any of his fans, women fans, still have their own teeth.
But Steve Davis was a 6-time world snooker champion.
Before any of you probably were born.
At this point in time, snooker was getting audiences on the BBC of sometimes up to like 18 million.
18.5 million, yeah.
Which, if you consider that's more people than watched any of the games in the last Men's World Cup.
Yeah.
And over 17 million watched the Women's Euros last summer. So the biggest sports audiences that we can possibly ever imagine was a regular snooker audience.
Well, Gabby, to be fair, much bigger than that, because our 18.5 million was at just past midnight on a Monday night.
We did only have 3 channels.
We did.
Let's say that as well.
But I'm ignoring the reality. I'm just giving you the numbers. If you want bullshit, I'm your man. Yeah. But what we're talking about here is a sport that in those days was actually bigger than football, is what you're saying.
In terms of audience,
Football, no, but football had a lot of problems in those days with trouble on, and snooker was the gentleman's game. But what you need is, you need that bit of luck. And me discovering this lanky kid who had no personality, boring as shit, absolutely, but could play, but had this focus that I could identify with. And although we're completely different people, he's been my best friend for 50 years. I mean, he's done Glastonbury 4 times now doing electro funk. It sounds like someone strangled a chicken. He's actually the DJ on the Blur concert at Wembley playing in front of 90,000 people. He's 65, for God's sake. But he's my mate, so I'm allowed to criticise him and you're not. But what he did for me was he gave me the talent. I like to think I'm the best sports promoter in the world. I think it, but it's actually true.
What does Eddie say about that?
Eddie is learning at the feet of a master and taking it to the next level, so he tells me. But both of us have one thing in common. We are totally reliant on the talent we represent and the sports we own. If they're not the best, then we're not the best. And you could be actually, in truth, the worst sports promoter in the world. And if you've got the best talent, you become the best sports promoter in the world.
But you have to spot that talent. You clearly did that with Steve. And in spite of him having this boring reputation...
Yeah, we created... I mean, it's a masterpiece of marketing. We created an imagery around boredom. And, you can't believe this, is that we took a bloke with no charisma at all and actually made a huge amount of money out of it by telling everyone he's boring. We did a campaign for Minolta copiers across the world with Steve Davis's face, a bow tie on, snooker cue in his hand. They paid us a fortune. And the title of the campaign was Boringly Reliable. Market to your target. That's the message. And Davis, of course, gave me the fact is, what was the killer was he was the best in the world as well.
Yeah.
And that's, you can't cheat sport. You have to be, you can't bullshit sport. You can bullshit marketing. Most of us do. You can bullshit life. Most of us try. But you can't bullshit in sport because it's results driven. And therefore, when you had the best player in the world, it was clear. And the BBC did a fabulous job for us on snooker, and they made us massive, but they gave us a platform for which we could then develop a business that started in 1982 when I got bored and I formed a £100 company called Matchroom Sport. And I went to my lawyers and they said, who's going to own the shares? And I said, 60% to me, 20% to Eddie, who was 3, 20% to my daughter Katie, who was 6. And he said, what about your wife? I said, you never know how long these things last, do you? So we'll deal with that later. I mean, she's still there after 53 years, so perhaps I should have given her some percentage. But the kids have subsequently taken over the business. But that £100 business, underneath a billiard hall in Romford, grew to being the biggest sports promotion company in the world. And it started by one word, fun. F-U-N. I already had money. Actually, all the money I made in 82, I lost. And I lost many millions more before it started. I started to see the right way to run a business in about 1990.
Well, let's go back to that, your first disappointment, if you like, although you'll probably put a positive spin on it for me. When you lost all that money and it felt like everything had gone,
I know.
How did you square that off with your kind of positive persona, and how did you get the confidence to go again?
I took it as God's will. I mean, I'm not a 100% religious person, but I do think most things are preordained in life. I think our future is in some way set out for us, and time tells that.
Is that so that you didn't have to take responsibility for the business?
Well, I mean, I took the view that I was a chartered accountant, and if it all went tits up, I could go back and get a proper job. And I didn't really want a proper job because I think proper jobs are boring. I wanted to be out there innovating and creating and given the opportunity. So I took it on the chin that we were in a recession in the late 80s. People were going bust, usually costing me money. And if the worst came to the worst, I could go back and be a chartered accountant. But then when I was a chartered accountant, I used to wear white suits to work sometimes because it used to scare people and it used to make me laugh. So I was never a standard chartered accountant, if you know what I mean. But what I did see was opportunity. And in every time there's a setback, it creates opportunity for someone else. So whereas the world was imploding in the late 80s, I didn't lose belief. I didn't lose focus. I was battered. It was a bit like a boxing match. If those of you have had the gloves on, you will know that when you're getting battered, you have to keep believing that you can find that one punch somewhere. You have to come back. Because if not, sit on your stool. You know, go and get a job for someone else. Or run away from something. We didn't run away. We stayed, and from 1990, when the light came through the tunnel, and it did, helped by other people, not just me. Chris Eubank joined me in 1990. I was going
to say, we've now skipped almost a whole decade, but you then went very famously into boxing. So tell me, and boxing has always had a reputation of some dodgy dealings kind of going on around the sport.
Really?
And I wonder how much that, you know, did you have a nervousness thinking, I'm heading into a sport here that, you know, you reinvented snooker, you couldn't reinvent boxing, could you? With that one?
Yes, it was so easy because everyone else in the boxing business was shit. And, you know, learn a lesson. If you've got nothing to beat, even people like me can look good. So you lot with intelligence and good look and youth, you're a walkover. I went into boxing simply because I was a fight fan and I didn't think the fans were getting value for money with the shows that were being put on. So I promoted, as I've done in my whole life, every time I go into anything, I think, would I like it? Would I be entertained? And would I get value for money? I went to boxing in the early days, and I was always a fight fan. I grew up wanting to be heavyweight champion of the world, you know. Unfortunately, when I found out I couldn't really fight, it was a bit of a career setback. But what I saw was people being charged money and not getting value. And in any business, that doesn't make sense in the long run. So I went back in and said, let's do it. And my first big fight was Joe Bugner against Frank Bruno, which made a shed load of money.
How much?
1.6 million on the night. I mean, some of us have to work hours for that, don't we? It also got 18 million viewers on ITV, by the way. And it was a typical example of give the public, give your market what they want.
So when you go into boxing at that level, I mean,
it was scary. I didn't know what I was doing.
You didn't run around doing York Hall for a few years, did you?
No.
You went straight into the big arenas.
Why not? Do you know what I was having? This is a funny story if we've got 2 seconds.
Yeah, go on.
So I'm having lunch with my wife, who's my biggest critic. And we're in Southend-on-Sea having a Chinese, and she's giving me stick. And I'm saying, I'm going to get involved with boxing. And she was very disrespectful. What do you know about boxing? Nothing, you know. You couldn't even fight when you was young. I said, well, I'm going to do Bruno versus Bugner. And she said, how on earth are you going to do that? You don't know what you're doing. I said, well, I've got Joe Bugner's bloody phone number. That's why. And she went, well, do something. You know how women talk to men? Do something about it. All you do is talk. So I got up from this Chinese. It was decent Chinese. And I said to the girl at reception, can I use your phone? She thought I was phoning a taxi. I phoned Melbourne. And a little squeaky voice. You won't remember Joe Bugner, but he had a very high-pitched voice.
He was a very big man.
He was a big lad. I said, Joe, it's Barry Hearn. You don't know me. I do a bit of snooker. He said, well, I've heard the name, mate. And I went, look, cut to the chase, son. I want you to come over to England and fight Frank Bruno. He said, well, that's going to cost you a lot of money. I said, I've done a bit of research, Joe. You got $10,000 for your last fight. He went, well, maybe a bit more than that. I said, well, I'll give you 250,000 quid to come and fight Frank Bruno. And he went very quiet, and then he said, and what plane did you want me on? The day after, I went round Frank Bruno's house at 11 o'clock at night because he'd just lost out a fight that was supposed to be happening and didn't happen. So Trevor Berbick got injured. Frank wanted a fight, and we just signed it and made it. But I had no idea what I was doing. I put together the fight. We sold 40,000 tickets at Tottenham Football Ground. And I thought to myself on the night of the fight, what do you do? You're a boxing promoter, Barry. And I remembered an old black and white Mickey Rooney film where he went in the dressing rooms to wish everyone the best of luck. I thought if it's good enough for Mickey Rooney, it's good enough for Barry Hearn. I went in the first dressing room, which was Frank's. Total silence, like a morgue. I was frightened to say anything. I just put my head around the door, went, best of luck, Frank. And he went, yeah. I walked down the aisle, the corridor. I could hear the music coming out of Frank Bruno's dressing room. They were having a party in there. This fella had fought Ali. He'd fought Frazier. He wasn't going to be fazed by a little fight in front of 40,000 people in London. I opened the door, and there he was with his wife. And he had 2 dressing gowns in his arms. And he said to Marlene, by the way, you would have rather fought Joe Bugner than Marlene. She was bloody dangerous. Which dressing gown do you think I look better in, darling? He didn't give a shit about the fight. And I said to him, Joe, I've got to just say thank you. My big speech. You know, you've come over, you've promoted this fight. You wore an Australian hat with corks hanging off it. You went to the press conference with a stuffed crocodile. I can't ask you to do more, mate. You sold all the tickets. And if you win tonight, there's a bloke in America called Mike Tyson's making a start. I will pay you a king's ransom to fight Mike Tyson in London. And Joe Bugner looked at me and he said, well, Barry, he said, you've treated me very well since I've been here, and you're paying me a lot of money, so I'm going to do my best. But if he hurts me, I'm going down. And I thought, shit, he's not going to try at all. It's the end of my career. But as it turned out, it went 8 rounds, and I got the bug. Because that feeling of energy and electricity from an audience when you've delivered something that they want to see. And the great thing about it, the BBC turned down the fight. They said it wasn't in the public interest. Can you believe that? And the last person I saw as I left the most successful fight in modern day was the head of the BBC, who had bought a ticket himself, Jonathan Martin, to come to watch. And as he walked past me, I went, not in the British public interest. And that's an old phrase from an old boxing promoter called Mickey Duff that you won't probably know or remember, but he was a bit of a strange man, but spoke a lot of truth. And he said, Barry, making money is great, but getting even is a different class. Always remember that when you look at your competitors. Making money is easy, easy. Getting even, oh man, that's sweet. That's super sweet.
So you're now in boxing, you've got the bug, and you've decided this is for you. Tell us the difference between being a boxing promoter and working as you were to kind of reinvent a sport with like snooker, you know, in terms of the people you're dealing with, in terms of the money and the opportunity, and what you did around the sport as well, because you'd have to do something different to the people that you felt weren't doing a great job. So what were you doing?
There's there's several key ways of running any business which sort of fall over on every activity. Number one, most important thing is the targeting of the market you're going into. You know, don't waste your time. I remember Kellogg's cornflakes. You see how these talks go into bizarre areas, don't you? We're now going to discuss Kellogg's cornflakes. Kellogg's cornflakes went to Japan and spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a marketing campaign. But no one told them there was no milk in Japan. Fundamental error. People in Japan for a few months were eating Kellogg's cornflakes like they were crisps while they were watching the telly. True story. I used to work a lot in Japan. And I said, there's no milk. Who has cornflakes with no milk? Ooh. Can you imagine a company the size of Kellogg's getting it that wrong? I mean, they left quite short, 6 months, done their proverbials and left. And the reason is because they didn't understand their target market. So my first thing when I look at anything is target market. Boxing was easy because there's a big market of people who like boxing, but you have to do bigger shows and you have to present them in different ways to attract a bigger audience, which includes women, which never used to go to boxing, by the way. Now you go, it's 40% women. And they're all having a great time, and why shouldn't they? They also add to it, you know, it makes it more diverse. And you look at different genres of people around the world, and how do you attract them to your marketplace? You do it by giving them value for money, predominantly. That's the most important thing. But the second important thing is they have to leave with a smile on their face. So in boxing, you'd have to do, as much as you can, competitive fights that make people want to come back and see some more. Probably we'll come on to it, I'm sure, but probably the greatest achievement of that type of marketing has been darts, which has been the most incredible success I've had in my entire career. Snooker was easy. Snooker, we gave it a gentleman's image, bow ties, dicky bows, whereas all these blokes were out of billiard halls like me. I mean, I came from those areas where your mother used to give you a slap round the head if you went in a snooker hall. So we managed to twist that round and make it into a gentleman's game that gave us an international reputation as being a gentleman's game from England, and also a sport that transferred very well to television because the television screen nicely fitted a snooker table. Then the personalities come in that you build, and that gives a reason to watch. And if they play at a high enough standard, which they will if you can make their job full-time and give them the money, then they will get better and entertain people better. So it's a chain reaction across the whole spectrum of sport. It's not rocket science, by the way.
Let's talk about darts then, because boxing was slightly different, because that was kind of already, boxing matches happened. You just did it on a slightly, bigger and more amplified version of it. With darts, that was like taking something, it didn't even look like the sport before in terms of what you did with darts. So tell me how you saw darts as something you could make money from.
It is such a joy to see a level playing field in life. I grew up with a chip on my shoulder because we didn't have any money. And I didn't like the fact that I was banned effectively. Today is different problems, whether it's colour, whether it's religion. In our days, it was the same horrible attitude about where you came from and what school tie. I was told, I was the youngest manager of a chartered accountant major firm, but I was told that was as far as I could go because of my background. I was 25. It's not good to be told you've peaked at 25. So what you do is you say, and you go and peak somewhere else. And actually, I went back and hired the audit company that I used to work for. This gives you a sweet feeling, Morning, chaps. You can call me sir if you wish. So the same attitude applies to sport. How do we get it bigger? When I started looking at darts, I'd seen it on the TV, fat blokes drinking and smoking. Quite entertaining characters, which is always good for sport. Jockey Wilson, these type of characters, obviously. And then they came to me and said, we're losing a lot of money and we're not very good. I love people that appreciate the level they operate at. I quite fancy being a brain surgeon, but I wouldn't recommend you letting me operate on you. We live in a world where everyone's got an opinion, including the fat old bloke that sits in the corner of the pub that knows the meaning of life. And yet he's a sad bastard, so why should I listen to him? Do you follow my flavour? We advise and we talk about what we're good at. So these people in darts who are running darts had the honesty to look at themselves in the mirror and say, we're not good enough. We're passionate. It's like most of the governing bodies in sport in this country. Do you know how useless they are? Waste of time. They love their sport with a passion, but they don't love the athletes enough. They don't look towards their future careers. They don't remunerate them enough. They don't drive the dream. They don't create the aspiration. They love their sport. That's not good enough. You've got to look at the individual to inspire. And these people that ran darts understood that. And they came to me and they said, would you help? I thought, darts, you know. I quite like a game of darts myself. I can't really hit the double bullseye or whatever. So I went to Circus Tavern in Purfleet, for those of you who remember. And as I walked in the room of 700 people with a low ceiling, you couldn't see across the room for cigarette smoke. What you could see was people jugging copious pints of lager, having a bet and eating a shit pizza. And I thought, all I do is smell money. This is my life. This is what I would want to be doing myself if I had a free night. And with that passion, it was so easy to create the personalities that told the story, the backstory, drawing in a more diverse audience by making sure the facilities, and then rewarding the players to such a level that it was worth their while to become real full-time professionals, which would mean that their technical skill would improve because they were more dedicated, more prepared. So Eric Bristow, when he won the World Darts Championship in the 80s, or late 80s, was averaging 86, 87 per 3 darts. Today, if you don't average 110, don't bother to turn up. They've taken the level, and therefore the level of entertainment, to another level. And we have now created, officially, the second biggest sport in Europe behind professional football. And it's bloody darts. My wife hates it. She thinks it's disgusting. She calls it just darts. I said, let's look a little bit beyond that, shall we? Let's look at the people that came from the areas that we were brought up in, that have had an opportunity to change their life. The essence of sport is changing your life, making yourself a better person, preparing diligently, being professional in your outlook, dedicating, sacrificing. But the equation is only equals changing your life. And inevitably that's by money. So the top darts players now are earning £2 or £3 million a year. It's not Premiership football money. But to earn a couple of £100,000 from the area they come from is enough to inspire other kids to follow in their footsteps. And what it does is, because of the areas they come from, and because they're quite happy, they become personalities which comes across on the screen, which sells the tickets. So, I don't know how many of you have been to the World Darts Championships at Ali Pali. Show of hands, please. World Darts Championships of Ali Pali. Oh, do you know why the rest of you haven't been? Because you can't get a bloody ticket, mate. Sold out first hour, 90,000 tickets. 125,000 tickets for Premier League. escalating £20 million of prize money this year for ordinary people with extraordinary ability, which sums up most sportsmen and women in this country. The greatest job and the most I'm proud of is that we haven't changed. We give value for money, ticket prices maintain reasonably low, but make sure that everyone leaves with a smile on their face.
And what you've done as well with darts, you talked about the beginning about it being the opportunity potentially for a working class kid to kind of get their way to the top of a sport. When you look at the audience at Ali Pali, there is literally royalty in there. You know, the princes have been, and Zara and Mike have been, and this is all strata of society enjoys that experience. So you create. So it seems to me there's a two-pronged approach. The athlete stroke sports person is at the heart of it, but the experience for the fan is equally weighted.
And also totally classless. I mean, again, you never lose that chip on your shoulder that you get when you're young. You've got basic morals, basic ethics that are developed usually by your mum or dad or the environment you're brought up in. And you never lose that, and you never want to lose that either. You should be proud of those roots. So to develop a totally classless sport, which is open to everyone, irrespective of colour, race, whether you're fat, thin, man, woman, sport doesn't matter. Ability matters. And there can be no favours. It has to be brutal ability. And then we can develop something that we can be really proud of. I love the fact that snooker and darts, for example, is gender neutral. You know, I get fed up with I can't fight as well as Katie Taylor. You know, it's a level playing field as long as they've got the chance. If they don't dedicate, anyone doesn't dedicate themselves, they don't deserve to get there. But overall, you can create a package which fits into modern day society. And the commercial spin-offs are humongous because volume markets, which are working class, predominantly volume, are largely ignored by the idiots running countries and running companies. Sometimes companies, but always countries. We're all governed by people that like to have their picture taken with a superstar, but then don't put their hand in their pocket to help the kids around the corner make a start in life. No government in this country has ever really recognised how important sport is to the fabric of society that we maintain.
And the money it brings into the economy, because
I mean, of course, it's
apparently
fortunes.
the reason we didn't go into recession in January and the economy just about skirted upwards was because the Premier League came back in January after the World Cup, and the injection of cash into the economy was enormous. And all the sport you're talking about has massive revenues. Is there a sport that you've looked at, or a governing body has come to you and you've thought, even the Hearn magic can't turn the sport round?
So what
have you knocked back?
Well, I got knocked back by gymnastics. I was going to change gymnastics completely, and the administration was so useless. It is unbelievable to believe.
What did you want to do with gymnastics?
I wanted to make the profile of the players. Firstly, I wanted them to earn a lot of money. You're an ex-gymnast. You know how tough it is, don't you?
Didn't earn a penny from it.
I know. Idiot. Was you any good?
It was all right, yeah.
Well, then why didn't you earn any money out of it?
Because it was very much an amateur sport, yeah.
Amateur sport is an excuse for being inefficient, right? That's just a word, isn't it? It's why all these governing bodies love medals, because they can pat themselves on the back of the shoulder and say, haven't we done a great job? Look, England has made 17 extra gold medals this year. Total bollocks. What I want to hear is hundreds of kids have got a life-changing opportunity for the effort and the sacrifice they've put in. I don't expect athletes to be loyal, by the way, because they've got a short-term career. They've got to maximise, but they need to be led by people that are maximising their revenues. In gymnastics, for example, you're virtually finished at 24. You've actually been training since you was 4 or 5. The damage to your body, whether it's menstruation down to ankles, doesn't make any difference. You're paying a price, which you love to pay because kids love sport, but the responsibility of the leaders is to make sure they're rewarded for that and not just abused. So I looked at gymnastics to try and pay prize money. I'm looking at and working with netball, and again, I'm not impressed with the authorities on netball, but their kids don't earn enough money. In netball, for example, our top girls, they go to Australia and New Zealand before they make any serious money. Well, I take offence at that we can't provide a good living here. It's like boxers going to America. Eddie has shown, no, you can stay in the UK and make as much money or more. But it comes down to how good we are within the systems we're allowed to work. So on any amateur sport, I looked at basketball. I mean, I love fishing. I get on very well with the fishing.
Fishermania.
Fishermania comes up, the quest to find the king of the water.
You know, I presented that on Sky.
I know. But you've done most things, haven't you, really? I mean, you've been everywhere. I mean, it sounds terrible, but that's why you're so famous. But on all these sports, it's a basic principle of we as a spectator want to be entertained by the best. But that comes with a responsibility to pay those people for entertaining us at that level, bearing in mind the sacrifices they have made to get to that level, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, and
we can't have a situation where you cut the flower off without servicing the roots, because then you don't have that flower doesn't come back again. And it works with people that way. And successive governments, what they want to be there. You know, I got really upset when we won the World Cup cricket, the next day they were at 10 Downing Street having their picture taken with Theresa May. And I said to Alistair, he's a mate, I said, Cookie, I wouldn't have gone. I would ask them what they're doing for kids to learn how to play cricket, for youngsters. What money are they putting in? Why would I go to your house if I don't like you?
I suppose some people like to work from the inside, and you like to work from the outside. What's that expression about a tent?
Trojan horse. It's a Trojan horse, isn't it?
And what I'm hearing from you, Barry, is that you have the person is at the heart of all of this, and the individual, and you want them to be rewarded. You want to make money, but you want to keep people. So there is a kind of honesty to your, there's not just a kind of, it is an honest.
It's absolutely in your face. I make a fortune every year. Anyone don't like it, doors over there, piss off, I don't care. I'm in business to make money, but I'm sensible in business to know, as Rockefeller once said, you've got to share that bit of bread with everybody. You can't just make... So making money is the game that's easy, but it's very motivating to play and judge yourself each year. Each year, I look at my P&L accounts, my balance sheets from a whole range of companies. I've got great management, and I tell them, go and beat last year. And if you do, you'll be rewarded, and all your people will be rewarded. It's pretty common sense. But along the way, within your area, I want to see prize money levels that we pay out grow as well. And then everyone has a bit of bread in their mouth. But don't take away from me the pleasure I get from building a company for 100 quid that grew to $1 billion company. Because that's me going to bed at night going, nice one, Bazza. Roll on tomorrow, son. There's another pound note to be made somewhere. And the day I don't get that, I get complacent. And complacency in business is the biggest killer there could possibly be, because you stop trying to be the best you can be. And as an athlete or a businessman, all you can hope for in life, just be the best you can be. And God will decide whether that's a monetary... Some people want to be nuns, monks. Good luck. That's their calling. And we've got to wish them the best of luck if that makes them happy. Some people want to be serial entrepreneurs and risk takers. Some people don't. They want a steady job. It's up to the individual. Just be the best you can be, and you'll have a life that you want to lead. And if you're happy, I'm very happy for you. And I'm happy all the time. So
we established that at the very beginning.
I expect you to be happy for me.
Barry, it's a lot of people here. I imagine your son Eddie obviously has quite a big presence on social media. If I was to ask people to put their hand up, who follows Eddie on social media? Put your hands right in the air. Yeah, there's a lot of people here.
No, that's scary. Don't do it. Don't do it.
And you can probably see, because obviously Barry doesn't have a huge presence on social media, but you can probably see where Eddie gets a lot of his chat from, I'm pretty sure, today. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, does it? And we've got so little time left. There's so much more I want to talk to you about, but I have to open it up to the floor, because I'm sure there are lots of hands going to shoot up in the air now. Who has a pressing question for Barry? The mic's just there, so there's a lady at the front here.
That was brilliant, thank you. I'm generally glass half full. I like to make the most of life, get out of bed in the morning, and lead the day the best that I can. Has there been a time where you've not really found it that easy, or thought, I don't know, I mean, I would say I'm happy all the time, but I've had curveballs thrown my way, or people who haven't been particularly pleasant, which has derailed me somewhat?
It's a great question.
Yeah.
I have a sort of blind faith in myself, but when it's really getting tough, I compare it to a 12-round fight. And not that I ever had a 12-round fight, but I can imagine, right? When you're getting battered, it takes a particular personality to keep getting up, doesn't it? Getting knocked down. It's easy to say, wipe yourself down, get on with it. But after a while, the brain doesn't like getting knocked down. In 1989, Christmas Eve, I was at my lowest ebb. Someone else had just gone bust for 300,000 quid. We was in the middle of a recession. There was no sponsorship. There was no TV hours. BBC and ITV were stuck in their mentality of the 30s as far as sport was concerned. I was losing money hand over fist, and I'm thinking, this is, my dream of being, I always wanted to be a showman, the P.T. Barnum of sport would suit me. But I was going skint. I owed the banks millions of pounds, and they were charging me 16% interest, and I couldn't make a shilling. And this is a gospel true story, the road to Damascus moment. I've got one last chance. I need a sponsor for £300,000, I'm asking, to sponsor the European Snooker League, which started in January. I had one last customer to see, was Trust House 40, based in Slough. I went to see him on Christmas Eve. I got off the train. It was snowing. I had my briefcase and me. And I'm thinking, like a 12-round fight, I'm in the championship rounds here. This is shit or bust. I go and have the meeting, and I make the worst presentation I've ever heard myself make, because my heart wasn't in it. I realised I was about to give up, I've been battered enough. And I said to the guy, and that's it, 300 grand sponsorship, and he said, you must really need this. He said, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Christmas Eve. And I said, his name, fun enough, was Alan Hearn. No relation, just coincidence. I said, well, Mr. Hearn, you're right, I do really need it. And he said, well, I've got no money. And I thought, that's it. Time, go back, get yourself a proper job, live a normal life. I thought, go out with some style. I said, well, Mr. Hearn, I'm sorry to hear you've got no money, but I'd like to wish you and your family a very happy Christmas and a prosperous New Year. And I thought, turned away, and just before I got to the door, he said, but I've got hotel rooms. And I said, what does that mean? He said, I've got no money. I said, I heard that bit, I understood that. He said, but I own a lot, Trust House 40, they did. They owned the Plaza Athénée in Paris, Sandy Lane in Barbados, the Waldorf in London, Plaza Athénée in New York. Good hotels. He said, I'll give you 300 grand of hotel rooms. And we shook hands. Most of my contracts are always best done on a handshake, by the way. Lawyers are a pain in the arse, aren't they? If I shake hands with you, you can take that handshake to the bank. You take a bullet with you as well if necessary, because no one's changing that. And I expect that from others. And this man I trusted, and we shook hands. By the time I'd walked back to Slough Station, I'd been on the phone to friends of mine in the hotel business, and I'd sold that 300 grand at a 40% discount and got £180,000 in cash. That £180,000 saved my business and saved me. I realised then at that stage that I could not be beaten in anything in life. And I've never lost that belief, which is why I'm so happy all the time.
So would you say that was your happiest moment?
I can't tell you. I walked down the street. I don't think my feet were on the ground. It was snowing like a blizzard. I didn't give a monkey. I got out of jail. I didn't have to be normal. I didn't have to go and do the boring things like earn a living. I had a chance. And all I've ever asked for is a chance on level playing fields. That's why I don't like any type of, I insist on full diversity across everything I do. I don't want anything to be, when people come for an interview for a job with me, they don't have to tell me what university they went. I'm looking in their eyes. I'm looking at their heartbeat. I want to see some passion. I want to see some commitment. I don't need to see a Harvard degree. Do you follow that?
Si, senor.
Thank you. Anybody else got a question? I think we've got time for a few more. There's a lady just there. Oh, hang on. Gentleman, sorry.
He sneaks in. I saw him earlier.
So, again, thanks again. Great speech today. You mentioned the importance of being relentless and having major focus for your success. So what advice would you give for those who are trying to develop that relentlessness and that focus and aren't quite there yet?
I think it's going to come down inevitably to what's going on in between the 5 inches between both ears. I'm not asking anyone to cut their arm off you, but I'm asking for a commitment. And you have to, this sounds bizarre, right? Forgive me for being bizarre, but it does work. Talk to yourself. So I know it sounds weird, but I do it even now, not as much as I used to. I used to do it once a week. I go in a room with a mirror, because the only person I can seriously rely on to tell me the truth is me, because everyone else has got an agenda. So I would talk to a mirror, and I'd have proper conversations as if I was talking to someone else, and the mirror would talk back to me. So you go in there and say, God, what was you doing? What was you thinking of today? What was you doing with that geezer? What was you doing taking that deal? Well, I thought it was a good deal at the time. The cash flow, that sort of conversation. So be truthful to yourself and find out what you want. There are 3 stages. There's actually 5, but in real life, there's 3 stages of life if you want to be successful. 1, totally and completely selfish, irrespective of anyone. Friends, family, children, anything. Community. Because like when you get on a plane, what do they say? If we experience a lack of oxygen, a mask will drop in front of you. What do they then say? Do yours first. Because you can't help anyone else unless you're breathing. So number 1 stage of life is selfishness. When you get to a certain stage where you think, I've gone beyond that a little bit, then you can become a better father, a better husband, a better friend. Before that, your focus was so narrow. Because if you don't focus narrow, you get put off by your lateral vision, if you like. When you get to the stage, as you get older, and please God it happens to you, you get beyond where your family are safe, protected, where you've families first, business is a close second. My favourite Eddie quote that he inevitably stole from his father, as most of his quotes are stolen from his father. When you get beyond that, you can then look at stage 3 of your life, which is how can I benefit the community I came from for which I owe my upbringing to. And that's an important part of balancing you as a human being. Later on, if you go really crazy, you can say, how can I benefit the country I come from? And if your name is Bill Gates or George Soros, then you can say, how can I benefit the world I came from? I'm happy to get to stage 3, and I intend to stage there. And if I can help a mini little bit on grade stage 4, I will. But that focus, that commitment, has to be from you. And you have to really believe it. From the age of 18 to 20, my mother locked me up in my bedroom every night, Monday to Friday. She said, you study. We can't afford to take the exam twice. You have to pass first time. She put that discipline and that work ethic into me that has stayed with me, and I'm proud to say has been passed on to my son, because he grew up in a different world to me. And I thought he might be a rich kid and be useless. And he's ended up being better than his old man. But it comes from a work ethic. So you have to ask yourself and be truthful in that mirror, what type of life do I really want? No bullshit yourself. Waste of time bullshitting yourself. There's plenty of other people to bullshit. But to yourself, tell the truth, and then act accordingly and make the sacrifices that you yourself are prepared to make, but be the best you can.
I think that is a beautiful and brilliant way to end. I'm sad that we've run out of time. Can we have one more middle digit to the room, please, to finish on?
Look, I tell you what, I had nothing else to do today, so I thought I might come here. I mean, I knew it was Gabby, obviously. I mean, you know, it's a treat to be interviewed by an expert instead of most of the muppets of you lot on social media. But, you know, this world is a changing place. But what we mustn't do is lose the excitement of the challenge, the thrill of the race. You know, we won't win every race. How you adjust to losing is equally as important as how much you celebrate winning. But it's the participation in our short time on this earth that gives us the pleasure to go out and stuff it right up, everybody. Good luck, everybody.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Barry Hearn. Thank you so much, Barry. That was beyond generous in terms of your stories and your brilliance. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. It's been fun.